Okay, so Mike, when I approached you, I said I want to do something on email overload again and escape from email hell. You had an admission to make, which you can now make to the public, and that is.
So I talk about this a little bit in the training, but Steve and I used to do these workshops called Protectivity. Remember those? Those are like
Yes.
from like 3-4 years ago.
Yeah,
Coming up to that. And one of the things I would always say in the workshop is don't check email first thing in the morning. Like, just don't. And I remember Steve would drive. We were driving around. I think you were taking me to the ferry, and you're like, I love what you're doing, but you gotta stop saying that. You need to stop saying that. I'm like, what are you talking about? I am a productivity guy. I mean, that's my thing. And he said, yeah, but it's not everything is cut from the same cloth. Not everyone can do. And the more I started coaching clients, the more I started speaking about it, the more I started to take the more I took a firmer stance on email, the more I recognized that there are a lot of other things that you should worry about more than worrying about whether or not you should check email first thing in the morning. I still don't check it first thing in the morning, but I'm not steadfast about saying, hey, why are you checking email first thing in the morning? I think there's better approaches to take. So yes, that was, and this is the first time I'm admitting this in public, by the way, because that was a private conversation in a vehicle.
And I don't think I was that polite when I said,
no, you weren't. You were not that polite.
The value of what you were saying though is don't let somebody else set your agenda for your day.
Yes,
that was always your message, and that's a valid message. It's just you don't know, but some people have to, just because of responsibilities and other things for certain habits to take hold, you need to massage them in, as opposed to just outright cutting them off at the pass. There's certain things when you're building boundaries, you can't just say stop doing this, do this instead. There's often a better, gentler way. And I think that the message I was trying to convey, which is what you said, which is, look, don't let someone else set your tone or the agenda for the day, is the message that's easier for people to say, okay, I can get behind that, as opposed to, hey, don't check email first thing in the morning, because if you're a salesperson or a realtor or someone who's your boss, or you're working in an environment where your boss is like, hey, I expect you on email first thing in the morning. But Mike said no.
But Mike said no. Who's this Mike guy?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's part of what I talk about in the training. But what I really want to focus on is, okay, if that's not the crux anymore, don't check email first thing in the morning. And by the way, there's tons of websites that continue to say this.
Of course, it's not. It's a valid. There's a valid argument behind it.
There is. But I think it's more about again, it's the why, the what, the when is often less important than we give it credit. When we do things, it's more about what we do when we are in those moments, as opposed to when those particular moments seem to happen. I've got plenty of productive people that keep their email inboxes all day long, but they know how to treat them. And it's about having a good relationship with email. That's ultimately what we want to have happen.
And to that end, let's jump into the video. So Mike's the video that we're going to be looking at, Mike pre-recorded yesterday for us. It's about 26 minutes of training. We will be in the chat forum through the entire training. You can help us out. If you have a question that you want to have answered rather than just kind of commenting, make sure you click the little question bubble beside it. If not, we will do it for you. But that way there, I can easily demark what the questions are, and then we'll come back and we'll answer all your questions, and we'll answer some of them certainly while we're in chat, while the video is running. So sit back, relax now, and enjoy the next 26 minutes of Mike Vardy helping you escape.
All right, let's talk about the idea of escaping email hell now. And, these are email management tactics you can start using today. And I wanted to touch on these because there's 5 particular tips that I think you can start using right away that are going to allow you to escape email hell, because it can be a real pain point for you and your productivity. So here's what I used to say, and Steve will get a kick out of this because he was there when I was saying this kind of stuff before, and I found it, this is what I believe. Like, this is literally what I would say, and you're seeing common advice around this on the internet all the time. Never check email first thing in the morning. And I'm not here's the thing. I'm not totally against that idea either. I think that email can be a big, big rabbit hole that you go down. But the tricky part is that not everybody can do this. And Steve recognized this from the get-go. He said, Mike, you probably shouldn't offer that advice considering that, not everybody can do that. And the more I started working with clients and dealing with people both in person and virtually, there was a lot of, look, you know what, that sounds nice, but the reality is that I can't necessarily do that. And so I started thinking more about, well, how do we make it so that email isn't a place where you get stuck all day, but instead it's a place where, you can go in, get what you need to get done, and then get out. And, so now here's what I say. Here's what I say today. So if someone was to say to me, hey, what are your thoughts on email and when I should check it? I say when it comes to email, it doesn't matter as much when you check it as to what you're doing while you're checking it. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean that are you fiddling with your, are you checking it on your device and you're not really paying attention, or it's more about what you're doing inside of that email application. No matter where you're checking it, no matter what time you're checking it, no matter how many times you're checking it, it's more about what you're doing while you're checking it. And a lot of this has to do with going into email with the things you already know you need to do, as opposed to just dealing with the shiny new that comes in. And that's the biggest pain point. I don't really touch on these as one of the tips is to, first in, first out. I think that should be, that's a given. And I also think that there's not necessarily a way to, to force people to go down that road either. I think it's a given. I think it should always be whatever is oldest should be dealt with first. But again, everyone kind of works with email subjectively. So again, when it comes to email and checking it, it doesn't so matter as to when you're checking it, but it certainly does as to what you're doing while you're checking it. And what I say to people is don't be an email explorer. Don't spend time exploring your email, but do be an email extractor. Like go in and say, you know what, I want to get that information out of here. Here's a great quote from Mark Stiegler. And he wrote, in the information age, the first step to sanity is filtering. Filter the information, extract the knowledge. And when you do that, what happens is you get the information that you need, you get rid of all the fluff, and you can extract what's needed. So again, and I know I see that I've got a little bit of a capital A there instead of the small a and stuff like that. But my point is that it's important for you to be an email extractor. Get that information out. Get the details, what you need out. Don't be an email explorer. Don't wander aimlessly in email. Don't go into email just dealing with that new stuff. Instead, go in and say, okay, of all the stuff that's in here, how do I get what I need out of it so I can move on with the things I really need to move on with? So I'm going to talk about these extraction tips. And the first one is give your inbox an intention. Now, what do I mean by that? The inbox is a very it's a very open term. Like the inbox technically should mean something that, it's a temporary holding area for something. If something comes into your email inbox, it should be there until you know what to do with it. But the problem a lot of people have is that they leave things sitting in their inbox even after they've looked at it. You'll look at the email and say, okay, I see that old email, or I've just checked it. Now let me look at this other one. And that is another tactic that I used to say, you can't do that. You've got to move your email into another area. And we'll get to that in a second. But I think the key here is to say, as long as you have an intention with what your inbox is and what it stands for, then you can start to really work with that. So whatever your inbox means to you, whatever its intention is going to be how you can better manage your emails, how you can escape that email hell a lot quicker. In fact, you need to ask yourself, what is your inbox's intention? And there's really 3 common intentions for your inbox and your intentional uses. And I used to work for Costco. So you're going to see a little bit of Costco talk here. But there's an area in Costco that's called the receiving area. And there's also, places where we store things like the steel. And then there's the service area, which is the active stuff that's happening on the floor in real time. So when you think about it, when you go to Costco, you don't get to go into the receiving department and shop. You have to wait until that stuff goes out onto the floor. And if it's storage, then it's stuff that's in the steel, and you really aren't supposed to be climbing steel to get stuff down or pulling things out of those pallets. So the service area is where you're going to be spending your time. So let's take a look at these 3 different intentions and maybe figure out which one you're using your inbox for. So if your inbox is being used as a receiving area, really it's an area where emails come in, but they don't stay for long.
You move messages out, and at the end of the day, the area is clean. So this is like a traditional inbox zero kind of scenario where you get all the stuff that comes into your email inbox. You deal with that stuff, whether it's be through responding to the emails, whether it's moving those emails into other areas, which we're going to get to, or whether it's putting them into your task app, which I believe is a fundamental component of email management, is getting things, the communications out of there and into something actionable like Todoist or Asana or Trello or any of these tools. But that is when you're using your inbox basically as a transitory space. It's a space where things come in, but they don't stay for long. And if you ever go to a Costco, and again, the great thing about a Costco is you can see all this stuff. And one of the things they always to say is we want to get the dock clear, and that's the receiving dock. Let's get the dock clear because tomorrow morning or later that day, there's going to be more stuff coming in. And the thing is what's great about Costco is that there's an entire department dedicated to just receiving stuff and getting it out of the dock. When it comes to email, you're probably the only one that's dealing with the receiving and then the shipping and all that stuff. So you don't have the dedication of several people that are really dealing with the receiving area of your inbox. You're dealing with it all. So you have to have that intention. What is this for? If your receiving area is your inbox and your inbox is your receiving area, then that's great. You know what that is. That means that you traditionally go down to like an inbox zero mentality. The key is where are you going to move your messages to? And we'll get to that in a few minutes. Storage area. This is the second one. So you keep your messages in here unless they belong in a particular folder for easy access. So, and we'll talk about folders in a little while, but you're moving emails into specific folder areas. But then all the other unread messages are seen as bold, right? And the older emails aren't. And that's what a lot of people do. And Steve and I have asked this question before. I remember doing workshops with Steve, and Steve would say, how many emails are in your inbox? And invariably, there would be someone say, well, unread. Like they'd raise their hand and they go unread, and we'd have to say no, like altogether. And the numbers were astronomical, and we'll touch on those in a little bit, because I think that there's something to be said for using your email inbox as a storage area can be fine as long as you know what it's being used for. So again, you want to make sure that if you're using it as a storage area, that you've got some fundamental practices in place, so that way you can easily filter through things like we talked about, like that Stiegler quote. You want to be able to extract that knowledge. And right now, the only knowledge you're really seeing is that items are bold, right? Like if they're bold, you know they're new. But that's not necessarily the information that you need. I mean, it's the information that might compel you to check that email. But again, if that email isn't important and there's other things in there that might need to be dealt with, that's something to consider. So using your email inbox as a storage area can be a recipe for email disaster, because there's so many things sitting in there and you're going to have a hard time wading through and figuring out what's going on. So again, this is probably the one intention where if this is your intention, then you better be very clear as to how you're indicating the important things inside of that storage area. Now, again, if they belong in a particular folder, you're going to be in better shape. But more often than not, people are leaving all of their emails in here as a storage facility, and that's a very tricky place to play. Now, the service area is what I see a lot more these days, and it's when people are starting to use their email inbox as a to-do list for the day. And what they do is whatever they're serving up today, or whatever they're serving today, stays in the inbox. So if something comes in and it's something you're going to deal with today, they leave it there. But if it's something you're going to deal with, either the next day or a week, they'll put it into a particular folder, or they'll reply to it and say, hey, they'll cater a response, or they'll move it to their task app. This is an interesting area because what it does is, because a lot of businesses and people I work with, they're spending all their day in email. So to have that front and center is great, especially if they're in email most of the day. And so if it's in a service area, like we talked about, then the emails, if you're looking at your email consistently, you're going to see what you need to serve up. Again, you want to make sure that you're not overcommitting, and whatever you don't end up serving that day gets moved into another, either elsewhere or replied to or put into a task app. Otherwise, it's going to quickly turn into a storage area. But this is kind of like the happy medium between, receiving and storage area. And when you think about it in the terms of Costco, receiving is where all the stuff comes in but gets shipped out. Storage is all the stuff in the steel, and the service area is all the stuff on the ground. So really, you're kind of, it's imagine something coming off the receiving dock and going right to storage. If it was out of stock or something or service rather, and it was out of stock, that means it's going to go right on the floor. Often this happens with produce and things like that. The storage area is where things go if there is plenty of stock. So again, one of these three intentions are going to be your core intention with your email inbox. Make sure you recognize which one you're using, and then as we move forward, you're going to see how to better utilize those so that your intentions with your inbox can stay pure. But you must choose one. Ultimately, you must choose one. If it deviates too far from service into storage, then all of a sudden you've got a lack of clarity, and that means that you're not going to be able to give the things the intention and the attention they deserve. If your receiving area becomes partly a service area and partly receiving some days, and receive it and service another, again, you're muddying the water. So you want to have clarity, so choose one. Extraction tip number 2 is don't overdo the flags and stars. Okay, so this guy right here is Syndrome, and I have a little Lego figure of him over here. And he is the villain in The Incredibles. And the reason I'm using him here is because he had an evil plan to turn everybody that was a person in The Incredibles movie into a superhero. And the reason he wanted to do that is because he said, when everyone's super, no one will be. And that's really what happens when you start to overdo it with the flags and the stars. In fact, looking at all of these right now, these are the stars that are in Gmail. Now look, I've got one in use, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 others, not just necessarily stars, but indicators that are not in use. And those are the flags. And again, Outlook has varying levels of categories and stuff too. So there's a lot of other things to play with Office 365 and Outlook. But there are a series of colored flags there. And notice how none of them have any kind of meaning behind them. Blue follow-up flag, green follow-up flag, red star, purple star, the bang, which is, I think, the red exclamation mark, the yellow bang, the check mark, the information. Like, there's no real rhyme or reason as to what they are. So if you're going to use indicators and you want to use them for extraction of information and get out of that email quickly and easily and painlessly, choose 3 types of indicators. So if you're looking at these, notice that mine is a green star. Well, my colors for productivity is dark green. So the star for me, it'd be like, this is something that I want to have it draw my attention. I only use one. Like, this is something that I want to see. And it's often stuff that's sitting when I'm using my email as a serving area, because that's how I use mine. And you're going to hear more about that in a few minutes. But pick 3. Maybe the green star means go, red means it's stop, but hold it here, and yellow means, we're in back and forth volley mode or whatever. You can pick them, but if you start to have more than 3, then your brain starts to wonder about, well, what does that mean again? What's purple mean? What's orange mean? You really want to limit these. Okay, so choose 3 at the most. Sometimes you don't even need to have 3. Now, use them in conjunction with your inbox if you're using it as a storage or service area. So, for example, if you're using it as a storage area, you're going to see all these bold new emails that are coming in. Maybe your green star is going to indicate those things that you want to have stand out over and above the bold emails, right? And if it's a service area, maybe you're going to have, like I said, those green ones are going to be like, hey, these are all the things that I'm working on today that are in my email inbox, but here are the 5 that I'm indicating with a green star. You're not going to really need to use them if you're using your email inbox as a receiving area, because there's not going to be anything in there. And remember, you can remove those stars at any given time or keep them starred, and there's ways to see starred and flagged emails, even when you move them into folders and things like that. But again, if you limit the amount you're using and then kind of use them with intention inside of those inboxes, then you're going to have a better chance of making sure they get your attention. And then choose colors that matter to you. As you can see, I've chosen green. Why? Because green is the color of productivityist. So red might mean urgent to you, or it might mean stop. Blue might mean, like, hey, this is my favorite color. These are the people that I really want to get in touch with. Maybe red is for your boss, and you're going to flag everyone with your boss. We'll talk about filters in a minute and maybe how you might want to use those instead. But use colors that matter to you when you're using indicators. So again, choose 3 at the most. Use them in conjunction with your inbox, especially if you're using them as storage or a service area, and choose colors that matter to you. Extraction tip number 3 is filter wisely. Now, the problem with filters, there's so many options, especially in Gmail, and you can also use filters in Outlook, but they can break, so you want to use them wisely. here's how you can filter wisely and without having to have a ton of knowledge on how to set up filters in Gmail and Outlook. And we're not going to get to those today. But here's one way to filter wisely. Don't use the unified inbox of email apps. And so the apps like Apple Mail, and I'm going to show you one I use called Newton and others, they have the ability for you to look at all your emails across multiple email accounts. Don't use that as your default view. And there's a reason behind that. I'll get to that in a minute. Set up automated filters that are simple. So for example, if you use an email address that you want to make sure, let's say all the emails that come from your boss get flagged with that red star. That's a pretty simple automated filter. You could set that up pretty easily, but don't set up filters that have aliases and things like that, because that can get a little bit weird. So set up automated filters that are simple. And again, be sparing with the ones that you're using. Don't go crazy with them, okay? Because the more filters that you have that could break, the more you have to go in and do some maintenance on them. So set up automated filters, and Gmail and Outlook allow for this, that are simple. And then be cautious about filters that skip your inbox. We have Gmail that filters promotions and that end up having, newsletters go to promotions tab. And I'm sure if you check your spam or you check, the low priority emails, you're going to find some in there that are like, hey, wait a minute, why are those in there? Because you've let Gmail or especially Gmail in this case, dictate what you see versus what you don't. So there's a lot of filters already set up to kind of segment things from hitting your inbox. So don't add another to the mix unless you're absolutely sure that you don't want it to go to your inbox. So if it's, I don't know, a newsletter, that could be an example of one. Things like that. And there are some apps out there that allow you, and some services that allow newsletters to just skip your email inbox altogether through automatic filtering. But let's talk about the unified inbox first. So here's Newton, and this is what I use on the Mac and iOS. It's also available on other devices as well, but we're going to focus on the iOS version. So you can see here that I've got the all inbox view, which I've highlighted for this purpose, is because what it does is it takes up all the productivity stuff, all the professional stuff, and all the personal stuff. Now, the problem with that is that if I was to look at all the inboxes together, I've got to have 3 different voices to respond to these: the productivityist voice, the professional voice, and the personal voice. Not only that, but do I really want to be responding to personal emails during the workday? So again, having these separated out allows me to look at these in a cadence that really works for me. I don't really look at my personal email till after 5 p.m. because I don't really need to. But the productivityist one gets the most views, and then professional is second. So again, if you've got emails filtering to one email program, don't use the unified inbox. It's going to create some confusion as to when to necessarily respond to emails, and also the tone that you might want to communicate inside of your email program. All right. Extraction tip number 4, use integrations, there's this word again, wisely. So here are some integrations to consider, and these are ones that are definitely wise uses of your time and worth setting up. So send later, there's tools like Boomerang, and Newton also has this set up as well. And Gmail has there's a couple of labs features that allow you to send emails after doing certain things, but I'm going to focus on Boomerang and Newton in particular, where that you can send emails later. Now, why is this an integration worth considering? Well, if you get an email at 11 o'clock at night from someone and you see it, rather than leave it sitting in your email inbox or in your drafts folder because you've written an email and you just wanted to sit in drafts, instead set up a send later with it, so that way you could have it go out the next morning at whatever time you start your workday. Whenever you send an email message, there's more to the message than just the content of it. There is the context, there's the subtext as well. So if I was to respond to an email from Steve, let's say he sends it at 8 p.m. at night and I respond right away, Steve not only knows that I got the email message to him, but he also knows that I might be available to talk to him at 8 p.m., which I may not want to have him know, right? So again, send later is a great option, especially if you're trying to create some boundaries around how you deal with email. Add to, and I've put task app of choice inside of brackets here, because there are a lot of apps out there that do connect directly to your email. Todoist is one. There are several of them out there. Asana does it to a certain extent as well within Gmail. Even Outlook allows for this. And Newton does this with many different apps, including Evernote, which I know Steve's a big proponent of. And Evernote does actually have that capability as well through Gmail. So you want to have this there because there's a lot of messages that come in that require action. So if they require action, get them into that app of choice, whether it's whatever task app it is. It allows you to kind of get them out of your inbox, get them out of your email program, and get them into the place where you're going to take action.
And then canned responses. Outlook has this. Gmail has this. In fact, Outlook, you used to actually have to create separate signatures for them, but now there's actually canned responses for them. These are great because they save a ton of time. And one way you could figure this out is you can kind of look and see what emails you're sending regularly, go back into a sent message, copy it, and put it in your canned response. If you have a text expansion tool that's outside of your Gmail program, like Breevy or Text Expander or Atext or any of these other ones, what you can do is you can set those up and have them work inside of your email program. But these three alone, these three integrations are going to keep you out of your email inbox at the wrong time or for the wrong amount of time. These are ones worth considering. Here are some of the integrations that are built right into Newton. Okay, so there's Tidy Inbox, which is kind of like what SaneBox offers, which allows me to have low priority and newsletters kind of go into their own separate folders. I don't really use that on my Productivityist account because I use SaneBox for that, but my other ones I definitely do. Snooze is another option. I don't like snoozing emails, but if you like to, this is a very robust setup for snoozing. That is another option to consider if you want to not respond to an email right away or you want to have an email come back to you. There's connected apps in there. There's a sender profile. There's read receipts, so you could have a read receipt requested if you want. Again, it's nice to have that for certain emails, but maybe not for all. Of course, there's the send later. And then there's a remind if not replied, which I kind of like. So if someone hasn't replied to it, it's almost like creating a follow-up. And then there's undo send, which is another one that they've offered. So again, I know Newton costs, I think it's $100 a year, which is far more expensive than free, but you're spending a lot of time in email, which means you could be losing a lot of time in email. This app definitely helps me get in and out of email quicker. But again, you don't have to use Newton for all of this, but you can see there are different features here and integrations that you may want to incorporate into your email workflow. And finally, extraction tip number 5, create what I call staging folders. So what are staging folders? Well, they're folders for projects in your email app. There's folders for people, your colleagues, your boss, your significant other, your friends, whatever. Maybe a group of people like reporters or something like that. And then there's folders for themes. And if you followed my work for a while, I'm a big believer in theming your time. And so what I do is I actually have folders that I put in for different days of the week, because every day of the week has a specific theme. Monday is optimization. Today is audio video day, so anything audio video related might go in the Wednesday folder. Tuesday is my admin day, and so on. In fact, this is my 3-mail workflow, which I'm going to also share with you. I'll have a link at the end here where you can kind of look at it a little bit deeper. But this is what I call 3-mail. And the reason I call it 3-mail is there's 3 stages of activity here. There's the incoming email, which basically says check your email, right? So and looking at it. So analyzing that email and making a decision around it. So that's that first phase. And so when I look at that email, and I'm going to go over this fairly quickly because I don't want to spend too much time on this right now. I asked, do I want to deal with it today? That's the first, that's that secondary decision. Yes or no. If I want to deal with it now, I reply now. If not, then I add it to today's folder, right? So I'll add it to the folder called today, right? Like the today folder. So there's 3 different stages of folders that I have. There's the inbox, right? Then there's the today folder, which is the staging folder for today. But then if I'm not going to answer that email today, I have other folders there. I have folders for all 7 days of the week, and you don't need to necessarily do that. But based on the theme, I'll decide when I want to answer it. So if someone was to email me today about a podcast guest, I would either answer it, I'd put it in the today folder if I wanted to answer it today, or I'd put it in probably next Wednesday's folder if I feel like I can give them that much room. So again, there is this capability of creating a workflow that supports the way you want to respond to email. Create some real boundaries around it, right? And I believe that, again, email isn't about immediacy of response. It's often about importance of response. Certainly, there's some immediacy required to some, but it's about choice, and you can make those choices. If a guest is asking me to be on their show, it's really, I might not respond for a week. But if it's somebody that's, Steve emails me, I might respond that day. I might respond the next day. So what happens here is then I will look at, so once I get through today's folder, then I will look at that day's folder for, that I'll look at all the unopened emails. And if there is others, I'll go through that process again. And if not, I'll I'll go back to the I'll go to the today's folder, deal with all the emails, and then I might go to the next day's folder. So it's an interesting workflow. It takes some getting used to, but I really like the way it's pulled together. And I've actually automated it inside of SaneBox. So in SaneBox, if I drag it to that folder, it will actually snooze the email until the next Tuesday or the next Wednesday or the Thursday, Friday, or weekend. So I can actually do that with those folders. I don't have it snoozed for the Sane Today. I don't have a Sane Today folder. I just have a folder for that, but I can set this up in SaneBox fairly easily, and you can see my setup there. So in closing, how to escape email hell. Give your inbox an intention. Don't overdo flagging and starring. Filter wisely. Consider core integrations and create staging folders. Now, I do have more escape from email hell bonuses. For example, I've got some templates that you might want to try, things like that. I've put them all at productivityist.com/3mail. So if you go there, you'll be able to get all of that stuff. And I'm really excited. So now, thanks for this. And now let's get to some of those questions that you have, because, I want to make sure I can help you out with them. What do we have, Steve?
Well, we've got a fair number of questions. Yeah. And as I say, what will happen is Mike will email me Mike, you'll send me the video, and I will embed it in the webinar replay. Don't watch the replay that's sent to you immediately after, because that's going to be a replica replay, and it's going to be just the exact same as we just saw. Wait for the YouTube replay that I'll send you a little bit later, when I can have a chance to clean it all up and edit it. So Dale's asking, how does this all work with Gmail, which is employers use Gmail? So all of the different systems that you were talking about, really, there are tools pretty much even in the native Gmail app that you can create all the same systems, right?
Yep. The key with Gmail, though, and you want to be careful with when you're creating staging folders, is they're automatically alphabetized. So when I created staging folders for, let's say, my days of the week in Gmail, I would use 01 Monday, 02 Tuesday, 03, because then it would be sorted alphabetically. So I could literally drag them to the right, as opposed to having it go whatever the first day would be, which I think would be Monday would be fine. No, Friday would be actually the first one that would show up. Then Monday. Then you got so use numbers or use some kind of symbol in front of it to kind of create them. And yeah, there are labels in Gmail as well. I don't really dive into labels too much, because once you start to add layers on layers on top of this stuff, then email becomes a place where you spend a lot more time. And I don't need to spend a lot of time in there. I need to get the information that I want, and get the heck out of there.
Okay. Good stuff. Jeff's asked, is there's easy way to move an email into Apple's Reminder app?
I think with Siri, you can. I think they've started to create some integration, not so much with Siri, but I think they have. Apple Reminders, and you and I have talked about this before, Steve. It's not a terribly robust task management option. They are getting better with it. What I would probably do in this case is to get an email in there is very tricky, because I haven't seen anything. There might be some IFTT. I think an IFTT recipe could help you there. We'd have to look into that. But I generally don't use reminders very often at all. And I just don't find for the kind of work and scale that I need to do, even for personal stuff. It doesn't have geolocation like Todoist does, things like that. So I tend to steer clear of it.
Now,
Steve, what about you? Do you have thoughts on it?
I do, but you won't like it, because the system that I use is I'm in Gmail. And when I have an email that's time sensitive that I have to deal with at a certain time that I have to be reminded of, I make it into a calendar event. And I just say, make this an event. And then it brings the entire email into that calendar event where it's timed. And that comes up as a reminder for me.
That's a good workaround. That's actually a really good workaround if you're going to use. Yeah, you're right. I don't necessarily like having tasks in the calendar. Yeah, that's a whole other subject.
Yeah, but it's based on time. It's based on time sensitivity.
Yeah, this is a good use case for sure.
Yeah, Sandy's asking, what's Mixmax? Mixmax is a email client which has got some really powerful CRM, or customer relationship management, features built in, especially the ability to be able to track emails, see who opens and doesn't open in response. So from a management perspective, especially from a sales perspective, if you're sending a lot of prospecting emails and managing conversations, Mixmax is a very powerful tool. It also includes some really nice calendar and scheduling options that will tie into your calendar. So it replaces a lot of the appointment scheduling tools that are out there. So it's a fairly complete solution. A lot of enterprises are deciding to use it. It's a Gmail solution primarily. Mixmax.
Can I just put the URL
Yeah, I just put the URL. I know people were asking about. I just put it as a sticky message at the top there, so it could stick there for a while.
Yeah. Well, Kim is replying. Okay, that's a reply. We have a URL from it's not mix, it's not min max, it's mix, MIX. Easy to find. Just type in mix max, it will come up.
And for the record, if you're using Google Inbox, it does not work very well, if at all. So if you're using Google's Inbox feature, don't use it. Don't use Mixmax. If you're using Gmail's usual interface, then it's actually a really cool tool with CRM and all that stuff built in.
Yeah. Sandy's complaining, saying, "Can I get this fixed and post it correctly in Patreon?" Yeah, I'll fix it and I'll post it correctly. Yeah. None of us really enjoyed going through it, Sandy. I can promise you. Mike was no walk in the park for Mike or I or April either. Okay, Mike, are you using a script? Because teleprompter? Because you are a terrific lecturer. Yes, Abram. Mike is a terrific lecturer. Let's not let it go to his head.
Thank you.
Any limit? Carr is asking. Any limit to the number of folders?
Not. You mean? Are you talking? I guess if you were to say, are there a limit for the amount of folders you can add? No. Should there be? Yes. I think when you're sitting down and mapping out your folders, you need to figure out, for example, if it's people and you have a ton of people that you're talking to, maybe go by department, and then you can sort within that folder by the sender, right? You can do things like that. So it's about, whenever I work with people on this, I tend to go wide, and then we try to narrow it as far as it should go. The reason I like using the days of the week is that there's 7. Like, there's no question that there's no more than that. If you're going to use in traditional GTD terms, you'd be using 43 folders in a lot of cases for things like this. So I don't think I think the limit is something that you can set, but I think it'll evolve. So if you find that you're working with one person in particular that stands out from a department that you want to make sure that those emails stand out, then you might pull them out of that folder. But I wouldn't use folders for projects that are going to be very quick and in and out. You want to use it for stuff that's generally ongoing so that the folders actually have more meaning. There's nothing worse than having an email folder with like 2 emails in it. It just doesn't make any sense. And Steve, you're when it comes to Evernote, I mean, you're down to one. You're down to one notebook for that stuff, right? So tagging.
I never leave anything. I never leave anything in email. It's my system's quite a bit different than Mike's, but there's a lot of the same kind of basic tenets. But any email that's important that comes in gets moved to Evernote, and that's where I house all of my archives, and that's where anything that's important. My email inbox, inbox 0 is almost becoming irrelevant to me. I could have thousands of emails in my inbox, but as long as I'm opening and reading each mail as it goes through, and every one that's important gets moved to Evernote,
So you're using it as a storage area, which is fine as long as you have a net behind it, right?
It's just a triage area. It comes in and then it gets distributed from there. Peggy's got a good question. Can you flag emails that come into your contacts, that come in from your contacts, or is that too big a category? I think it's a great idea to set up your contacts as marking every email, setting up a filter so that they're marked as important. That way you know that it's coming from somebody you know. That's kind of a life hack that I think is a good one. Mike?
The other thing I do is I have about 7 email addresses altogether for Productivityist. I only get one of them at this point, but initially when I was a one-man operation, I would have them all separated out like I was talking about in my email app, so that if something came into the sales email, it had its own listing of people. So I knew that they were customers. If it was an info email, then I knew it was coming from somebody who had never contacted me before. And if it was coming to me directly, then I knew it was coming to me. So that if you're not ready to set something up like that yet, and you want to make sure, okay, I want to have something like almost like a catch-all email, and I've seen a few of those, people talk about those, then have that set up, and that's the email you would give, that you would generally publicize. If it's an email, and again, we're talking about if you're a business owner here or whatever, and then you have your regular email for people that you know. But Steve, makes up a great point. If you only have one email address, you can have it so that, and Gmail has this automatically where it's flagged as labeled as my contacts. So you could have a rule that says if it's marked as my contacts, make sure that it is, either moved into a specific folder, or make sure that it's marked left as unread or whatever. You could do those really simply. And Gmail already gives you that my contacts as a label option by default.
Yeah. Josiane says, are there any alternatives to Newton with similar features? There are so many apps.
There are very few alternatives
can't think of any that have all of those things in there. And I know the cost of Newton can be a bit of a I would say a deterrent for people. But there are plenty of tools that they have that you can integrate. Like Boomerang would be a good example with Gmail or with Outlook. Follow Up DC is one that you could use instead of one app. But you can build your own. Like some of you might not care to have the read receipt option available or the follow-up option. But you do want to have the send later option. Well, Boomerang, right? And you just tether that onto your existing email. And actually, Boomerang is a really cool tool if you struggle with getting people to open your emails, where you can actually type your email and Boomerang will look at it and go, this email is likely to get read versus this one is less likely to get read. There's a tool, can't remember what it's called offhand. Someone I'm sure in the chat will be able to say. But there's nothing out there that takes all of those tools and puts them into one. There are ways to add different elements of those Newton tools and put them into your email, your email provider, whether it's Gmail, Outlook, whatever.
Yeah, and some people did have a hang. They won't hear me if they were hung up, but you have to reconnect just to make sure everything keeps going smooth, if that was the case. Bet is asking, I want to know how to delete very large amounts of email in Gmail viewed on Apple or devices or Mac computer. So basically, you're trying to clean out your inbox from a very overwhelmed inbox. And I'm sure Mike's got some great advice, but I'm going to drop a link in here. We actually have a little course on that called 3 Steps to.
First thing you could do is flip the switch on your email. So look at your oldest emails and make a decision as to, okay, I don't want to see emails older than from the beginning of 2017, let's say. So you go to your inbox and at the top, Gmail has this feature. You have to click on it. It's not quite apparent, but you could say oldest to newest instead of newest to oldest. Outlook, it's a bit more apparent. Same thing with a lot of mail apps. And you can just select all of those emails per page and just start and you don't have to delete them either. You could just straight up archive them because when they're archived, they're not gone. You can find them. And in fact, in tools like Outlook and Gmail, it's often better to archive them into the general archive folder than into separate folders because the search is going to be much faster if you're looking for them. But that's one tip that I throw to people. It's like, hey, let's look at your oldest email. Like when was the last time that what's the earliest email you want to see? Oh, I don't want to see anything before the summer. Great. Yeah. Let's go and archive everything before that. And then let's work backwards from the oldest and get that information to where it needs to be so that you can leave your email inbox knowing, even if there's stuff left in there, at least you know what all the stuff is that's in there so you can deal with it appropriately.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Richard's asking where they can get the templates you're talking about, and they are pinned to the top of the chat.
Yep. You just click on that link, and you can go there and just have to enter your email and stuff, and you get that. And I'll be adding. The thing is what's great about ConvertKit, and I know you use Infusionsoft, is you'll also get tagged as someone who's interested in learning more about email. And as I build more tools for that, you'll get more bonuses that I'm going to throw out your way and more information about email management.
Okay. Ernie was asking for a list of the daily themes.
My daily themes? It is not in my slide, but I can definitely send you. I can put them in here really quickly if you want. But I have a whole post about that. So why don't I just? I'll find the post that I have for that. And do you want me to just send it to you to send out with a replay, or should I try to put it in here now?
Yeah, just send it to me and I'll include it in the replay email.
Okay. I could see Mark's asking about Mixmax. I just see that's a recent question. Mark, I'll qualify what I said is that when I was last working with Mark Mixmax with a client, it was very buggy in Google Inbox. Now they may have changed it. This has been a couple months, so they may have improved it in there because more people are adopting it. But it was not. We had to actually uninstall it because it was not working properly in his. And he was using Google. He was using both in Gmail and Google Apps for Business. So it wasn't. So I'll qualify that statement a little bit more.
Okay. Mary's asking, great content. What's the best way for me to learn my options in Outlook? So she wants to master Outlook specifically. Can you think of a good training or a good resource?
Skillshare. Skillshare is a great place. Skillshare will be a great place to talk about Outlook. Outlook is becoming, especially on iOS, it's actually considered to be one of the better email apps on iOS. Microsoft is doubling down on Office 365, and Outlook's part of that. I think that The problem is with most Microsoft things is you've got several different iterations of Outlook that are out there. So you're going to want to figure out which Outlook you're using and find the training surrounding that, because if you're using Office 365, it's going to be way easier going forward because it's a SaaS, or software as a service. Whereas like if you're using Outlook for Mac, or you're using like an older version of Outlook, you might have to dig a little deeper. But you don't want to go the danger about going too deep with any email application and trying to master it is that it's like anything else. If you spend too much time tinkering with it, you could end up spending all your time in it. And if email is not where you're supposed to spend the majority of your time, then it may not be worth the effort to do that. And also, by the way, if you're trying to master something, or anything like that, where, I mean, I'm not saying Evernote's going to go away, but it's not like you can dive into, like, you can go into Evernote and get your head wrapped around it pretty easily, but you might not go into Evernote every day. You are going into email every day. So, measured progress is what I would recommend on any email application, whether it's a platform like Gmail or Outlook, or whether it's an app like Sanebox Newton, Spark, Airmail, any of these tools.
Okay. Excuse me. Sorry. Richard asked several times. He's moving away from Outlook and he's looking for recommendations for a better email client.
Okay, well, it depends on who's providing the email. If it's Outlook.com, then you're kind of, but if you're using like, a proprietary email address, like your own top level domain, I really do like what Newton has to offer. But if you're not looking for something that's going to cost you an arm, you really can't go wrong with Gmail. If privacy is a concern, you're already in the ecosystem in a lot of ways. But Gmail is by far the most ubiquitous. It's the easiest to use. It's got the most features built in. It's kind of like when people build, extensions for web, web browsers. Chrome's the first one. When they build extensions for email, Gmail's the first one because of who they are. So I would say that if you want to go with a desktop or a native app, Spark is really good on Mac. Sanebox is good across multiple platforms. Postbox is quite good too, but it could be a bit of a beast. It could take up a lot of storage. Yeah. But Gmail, it's hard to argue with the power
for transportability and flexibility. Gmail is pretty good. Mark is asking about Streak CRM. I'll just cut that one short. Where Streak is a CRM, it's a customer relationship management tool. It's not really an email client, and it's one of many inside a whole variety of them that are all pretty good.
It links up with Gmail nicely, though. That's I think why
it does work very well with Gmail. Yeah. Bob says if you move your emails that need to be done into Evernote, you put them in a special notebook. Oh, Bob, the way that I use it is I don't actually forward the emails into Evernote, although you can take any email and forward it into your Evernote inbox. But instead, I use the Evernote web clipper because I'm viewing my email in a browser to begin with. I use the Evernote web clipper to clip it into Evernote, which means that I can apply a tag as it goes in. And that's how I manage my processes through tagging rather than notebooks. It's pretty simple, but it's using the Evernote web clipper. And then the reason I can do that is because Gmail is in the browser. That's the reason that works.
Right. And that's the way. That's the workaround for people who don't want to pay for Evernote too. Is use the web clipper.
Yeah.
Right. The web clipper. Yeah. Go ahead.
The web clipper is magic. Yeah. It's
same with G. And by the way, Todoist has a web clipper. It'll integrate right with Gmail. Like there's lots of them out there. So you don't have to forward emails. You could use these integrations that allow you to get them in there and then be more specific about what you need to do with them, as opposed to just dropping them into the respective mindset.
Because then basically you've got a second inbox that you have to go through and triage.
Exactly.
Douglas says, I use Apple and GoDaddy emails. What's the best management system to use? We've kind of gone over that, I think, in pretty much detail what your options are. You're just going to have to decide. You can use that. You can use any of all of these systems will allow you to have multiple email accounts attached. So you've got the choice of all of the ones that we talked about, Doug.
Yeah. And you can use different ones for mobile versus desktop. There's a lot of different choices out there. I think it's just figuring out what feature set matters to you and how you want to treat email will help you make that decision.
Now, let's see if I can understand this. Peggy says, I have my Gmail automatically forwarded to my Mac. Can I create a flag in Gmail and have it carry forward to MacMail?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think so. No.
You have to flag when you're moving things into MacMail. There are ones that allow that flagging. So I think Newton does this, where if you flag it in Gmail, it automatically shows up as flagged, or whatever your equivalent of a flag would be in Newton. But in MacMail, you have to flag it in MacMail because of it's a native app. You know, so. But my bigger question is, and this is where I get a little bit. I only use Newton because of its features. If I wasn't using Newton, I would be using Gmail's web interface because it's just so much. It's just so powerful. And then I'm only looking at email when I'm connected. I mean, you can look at Gmail offline, sure, but I'm only looking at it when I'm online. So I guess I have to ask is why move it to MacMail at all? Like why? I don't. I mean, just keep it. I'd get the Gmail web app on or the Gmail iOS app because you could use that now. You're not beholden to using the Apple Mail app, and I would just use Gmail on the desktop. That's what I would do in your situation.
Yeah, and I've gone 100% that I use Google Contacts. I've used Google Calendar. I'm just, even though I know there might be better, can these folders be accessed easily from a mobile app? That's the kind of her issue because she uses her iPhone 99% of the time, which is a great point.
Yeah, they can be. So, I mean, when I'm looking at Newton, I can see all the folders in there. Any folder that you create on a email app that is, especially one that works cross-platform like Spark or Newton or Gmail, those folders are available on your desk But the key is, again, if you want to find them easily, create numbers in front of them rather than just go alphabetically, because they will automatically sort based on alphabetization.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so we've actually run out of questions. What did I say? An hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, we're right there.
We wasted a little bit of time today as we had And I'm looking. There looked like there was issues throughout. I'm going to have to re-record this because I've had to